Almost 1 in 5 people alive right now is Chinese. They run a country so big it crosses 5 time zones, and they run all 5 on one clock. The whole country, one time. Because somebody, a very long time ago, decided China is one thing, one people, one ruler, always has been. Here's what that somebody never mentions. It almost wasn't. China shattered into pieces that hated each other, spoke past each other, fought for centuries. And it shattered more than once. Take one dynasty out of this story, just one, and there's no China. There's a dozen countries glaring across a river in languages the next one can't read. So this is the story of how a muddy riverbank full of people who couldn't stand each other got hammered into the most stubborn "we are one" on Earth. It starts with a Qian, and a turtle, and a genuinely terrible way to run a government. You're the king, 3,500 years ago on the Yellow River. You want to know if you should go to war. You don't ask a general, you ask a turtle. A priest scratches your question into the shell, jams a hot poker against the back, and it cracks. Crack goes left, the dead say yes. That's it. That's the government. A turtle and a hunch. These are the Shang. And somehow this runs fine for 500 years. One thing to catch, those scratches on the shell are the oldest Chinese writing there is. Tiny detail. It's going to outlive everyone in this video. 5 centuries in, the Shang get the king who wrecks it. This guy builds a pond and fills it with wine, an actual lake of booze. Hangs roast meat off the trees around it so his drunk guests can float by and bite a rib off a branch. Outside the party, the country's starving. You can guess how that ends. A clan out west called the Zhou marches on him, and at a field called Muye, the king watches his own army turn around and walk toward him. Half his soldiers just switch sides on the spot. He goes home, puts on every jewel he owns, and burns his palace down with himself inside it. So the Zhou won. Great. Now they've got a problem. They just killed the rightful king, in front of everybody. So what stops the next ambitious guy from doing it to them? So they make something up, and it's so good it runs China for 3,000 years. They call it the Mandate of Heaven. The deal: heaven picks one true ruler of everything, but heaven can fire him. And how do you know he's been fired? He loses. Famine, floods, a rebel army at your gate? That's not bad luck. That's the eviction notice. In one sentence, they're the chosen ones, and the last guy's a documented failure. And buried inside it is the idea this whole story runs on. There's supposed to be one ruler over all of it. One. Now they have to actually run this giant thing. No roads, no way to send a message faster than a horse. So they cut the country into chunks and hand each chunk to a relative. Defend it, send me grain, swear you love me. Works great, for exactly 1 generation. Then it's the grandkids, who've never met. And the whole thing falls apart because a king wanted to make his girlfriend laugh. See, you summon your lords to war by lighting signal fires on the hills. So this king, whose girlfriend never smiles, lights them, as a prank. And every lord in the country comes sprinting, armor on, ready to die, to find the king going, "Kidding!" And she laughs. So he does it again, until the day real enemies show up, and he lights the fires for real, and stands on the wall and watches the road. Nobody comes. And there it goes. Shatter number 1. The king's a joke now, so the big lords stop pretending. Little states get eaten, and you're left with 7 big ones, each with armies in the hundreds of thousands, each sure it's the one that swallows the rest. 6 of them are still being gentlemen about it. The 7th, out west, is Qin. And Qin has decided gentlemen lose. They rebuild the whole society around one thing: winning. You want a promotion? There's a price list now. It's paid in heads. 1 enemy head, 1 rank. 2 heads, 2. A dirt-poor farmer can come home from a battle a nobleman. Qin stops being a country. It's a machine now. The only state big enough to stop the machine is Zhou. They meet at a place called Changping and lock up for months. And then Zhou does the dumbest thing in this whole story. Their general is a careful old veteran who knows the only way to beat Qin is to wait. So the bosses back home get bored and fire him. They bring in a hotshot kid whose whole experience of war is being great at talking about it. The kid attacks. Qin's general lets the whole army pour in, then closes the door behind them and cuts the food. 46 days. 400,000 men, trapped, starving, slowly realizing the confident kid marched them into a sack. When they surrender, Qin kills all of them, keeps 200 of the youngest alive on purpose, and sends them home, so everyone hears exactly what fighting Qin gets you. After Changping, it's not if Qin wins, it's a countdown. But the king who won Changping isn't the one who finishes it, that's his great-grandson. And how that kid gets the throne is the dirtiest soap opera in the story. It starts with a merchant. A rich trader spots a Qin prince stuck in enemy territory as a forgotten hostage. Broke, no chance at the throne, worthless. And the merchant looks at him and thinks, undervalued. So he spends his entire fortune buying this nobody a path to the crown. And to seal the deal, he hands the prince his own concubine. And not long after, she has a son. A son a lot of people quietly suspect is the merchant's. That son is Ying Zheng. The investment pays off insanely. The prince becomes king, dies fast, and the merchant's kid is suddenly on the throne, with his mother as queen and the merchant running everything. And the merchant and the queen, who go way back, pick the affair right back up. Then the queen gets to be a lot to manage, and the merchant wants out. So his solution is to find her a new boyfriend. He smuggles a man into the palace by passing him off as a harmless servant. It works a little too well. The new guy and the queen have 2 secret kids, he gets rich and arrogant, and eventually he decides one of his secret sons should just be king. So he steals a seal, raises an army, and launches a coup. And this is where the kid stops being a puppet. Ying Zheng comes down like a hammer, crushes the coup, executes the boyfriend, kills the 2 half-brothers, locks his own mother away, and then takes out the merchant too, the man who literally bought him the throne and might be his actual father. So the guy who's about to force all of China into one just learned, young, that everyone betrays you. Remember that. It explains everything he does next. Because now he has absolute power and the war machine his ancestors built, and he goes to finish the 6. The scary one is Chu, the biggest state in the south. So he asks his generals how many men it'll take. His old veteran says 600,000, the whole army. A cocky young general laughs and says 200,000, easy. And the king picks cheap. You can guess. The kids' 200,000 get lured in and smashed, 7 commanders dead in a day. So the king swallows his pride, rides out to the old veteran's house, apologizes, and hands him the 600,000. And the old man, marching off with the entire army of Qin at his back, does something brilliant. He knows what a paranoid king is thinking. What if this guy keeps the army? So he spends the whole campaign writing the king letters begging for more houses, more land, more gardens, like a greedy little man who only cares about getting rich. Because a general obsessed with real estate isn't a general planning a coup. He made himself look small on purpose so he'd live. And then he ground Chu into powder. But Chu doesn't go quietly. As their general dies, the Chu leave a promise behind. Even if only 3 households of Chu are left, it'll be Chu that ends Qin. The rest of the states fall fast. One of them, desperate, sends an assassin to court with a dagger rolled up in a map. Cue a chase around a pillar, a king who can't get his own sword out of its sheath, a doctor saving the day by throwing his medicine bag. It fails. It just makes the king angrier. And in 221 BC, the last state surrenders. For the first time ever, one man rules all of it. He decides king is too small a word now, so he invents a bigger one, first emperor. And then he does the thing that turns a conquest into a country. Because right now, it's barely one country. Every town writes in its own characters, weighs grain on its own scales, even cuts its cartwheels a different width, so a wagon from one town physically gets stuck in the road ruts of the next. So he flattens all of it. One way to write for everyone. One set of weights. One cart width that rolls coast to coast. He chains the northern walls into one great wall. He didn't just conquer China, he installed it. The one finally has plumbing. There's one thing he can't standardize though, dying, and it terrifies him. So he sends a man east across the ocean to find the islands of the immortals and bring back the potion for eternal life. And he doesn't send him alone. He sends thousands of young people, a whole floating colony. They sail over the horizon and never come back. There's a story they made it to Japan and just stayed and became ancestors of the Japanese. Either way, no potion. So his doctors feed him pills they swear will make him immortal. The pills are full of mercury. The man who conquered everything got killed by his vitamins. And the second he dies, the whole thing eats itself. He dies on the road, far from home, and his chief eunuch quietly swaps the heir for a puppet he can control. And to hide that the emperor's a rotting corpse on the ride home, he parks a cart of fish next to the body to cover the smell. So the founder of China travels home incognito behind a wall of rotten fish. And then the eunuch pulls the most unbelievable move in the book. To find out who he can push around, he brings a deer into the throne room and calls it a horse. The puppet emperor laughs, "That's a deer," and the eunuch turns to the whole court and asks, "Deer or horse?" And he watches. Everyone who says deer is dead within the month. 500 years of war to build this thing. Now it's run by a man who says a deer is a horse. And there it goes. Shatter number 2. Out in the provinces, 2 grunts are marching a work crew through rain that won't stop. They're going to be late, and under Qin law, late means death. So they sit in the mud and do the math. Late, dead. Run, maybe dead. Rebel, also maybe dead, but interesting. One of them stands up and says it. These kings and nobles, are they really born any better than us? And the meteor empire starts coming apart in the hands of farmers with sticks. 2 men climb out of the chaos, and you'd bet on the wrong one every time. The one you'd bet on is Shang, a Chu aristocrat built like a tank, a born general who never loses a fight. And his grandfather? The Chu general Qin ground into the dirt. The Chu, it turns out, keep their promises. The one you wouldn't bet on is Liu Bang, a small-town cop with a bar tab. His big career move so far? He was marching prisoners to a labor site. Half of them escaped, and he figured he was a dead man anyway, so he unlocked the rest. Go on, scram. Then got drunk and became a bandit. That's your future emperor. They both race to finish off Qin, and the cop gets there first, which makes the aristocrat furious. So Shang invites him to dinner. It's the most dangerous meal in history. Shang Yu's advisor spends all night signaling, "Kill him, he's right there." And Shang Yu keeps not doing it. So the advisor improvises a sword dance, and a guy starts dancing toward Liu Bang with a real blade. Liu Bang's bodyguard kicks the door in, gnawing on raw pork to look unhinged. And Liu Bang, watching a sword drift toward his neck, stands up and says he needs the bathroom. And then he gets on his horse and goes home. He excused himself from his own murder and left. Shang Yu wins the capital anyway, and then makes the mistake that loses him everything. Instead of running the one country that finally got built, he chops it back into 18 kingdoms for his buddies and shoves the cop off to nowhere. He unified China and ununified it, on purpose. And then he spends 4 years winning almost every battle and losing the war. Because Shang Yu trusts no one and does it all himself. And the cop? The cop can't fight, so he hires people who can and gets out of their way. Genius burns out alone. Slacker delegates his way to a throne. It ends on a cold night at a place called Gaisha. Shang Yu's surrounded, down to a handful of men. And in the dark, he starts hearing the folk songs of his own home, drifting in from every side of the enemy camp, because the cop rounded up every captured Chu soldier and had them sing. And it lands like a knife. If the enemy is full of home, then home already switched sides. He breaks out at dawn, fights all the way to a river, where a boatman tells him to get in, cross over, start fresh. And he won't. He says he led the young men of his home out to die, and he can't go back and face their fathers. So the strongest man in the story turns his horse around and rides back into the swords. Chu got its revenge on Qin, and then lost the very last fight anyway. So, in 202 BC, the cop wins. Liu Bang sits down on the throne of everything and names his dynasty after his home turf, the Han. And this time, it sticks. 400 years, long enough that being part of the Han and being Chinese stop being two things and become one. The people start calling themselves the Han. They still do. Over 1 billion of them. That writing that started as scratches on a burning turtle? It's called Han characters. The language out of 1 billion mouths is the Han language. 1/5 of everyone alive is carrying the name of a dynasty founded by a guy who'd have skipped his own coronation to hit the bar. That's your one China. It was never the land. It's an idea. One ruler, one people, one country, all under one sky. Invented to excuse a murder, forced into existence by a tyrant, and it shattered. And finally made to stick by a small-town cop whose dynasty ran so long the whole country took its name and never gave it back. Pull that one dynasty out, and there's no China. Just a dozen countries and a river. Which is why, 2,000 years later, the biggest country on Earth still runs every clock on a single time, and still won't let go of one word. One.